speaking of answering questions that nobody's asking, but they are asking.
The questions you mean to ask, but haven't asked us yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you've been meaning to ask this, and that is how to lead when you're not there. And so, I was just thinking of that because I just talked to Pastor Rich yesterday or whatever, and I said, how's it going back there? He's just got home to the Philippines from being in America and Canada for, I don't know, a couple months, right?
Yeah.
He's gone a long time. And he said, everything's really good, but there were some things I expected to be done and they weren't done. And I'm like, yep, that's the way it works. You're heading back pretty quick.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're going to see what's done and what's not done.
Yeah, it's true. I have an amazing team, though. So,
Yeah,
you
do. And we all do,
Yeah.
The truth is, there'll be people that just bless your socks off.
Yeah.
And there's others like, you should have known better. Like, we've been over this. Remember the two girls we had back in the day when we first started the children's home, Nook and Bo, right? Bo was the oldest one, Nook was the youngest. Two sisters. They were in the Open University, so they worked looking after our kids. And when the first time that we came to Canada, we came back to Thailand after like 7 months or whatever, and Bo said, Pastor Al, I got to tell you, I worked so much harder when you were not here. And the truth is, and I went through the stuff that she was supposed to look after, is absolutely amazing. And she ended up being a hotel manager and now runs a restaurant in New Zealand and that kind of stuff, And Nook was not quite as diligent. And she's just a sweet old lady now.
We love her.
But there's something about that, because I was always like that too. It's just my nature. When the boss is away, I work way harder.
Well, you feel the pressure from the responsibility, right? Because you know it's on your shoulders, and when they come back, it's on you.
That's
whether
right.
it's done or not.
When the leader comes back, we want to be able to say, this is what we did.
Yes.
And we did it to the best of our ability, and
Yeah,
we
and I
didn't
think,
slack off.
when it doesn't happen, it just, when we were driving here, Matt was reminding me of the story of Moses when he went up to the mountain, right? And then he left Aaron in charge, and then 40 days later he comes back down, and it's a totally different picture.
Yeah.
And when that happens, when you don't get what you want as a leader, a lot of times it's not, bad motivation or anything like that. The people still have the heart for you. But there's a couple things that are going on. Number one is the pressure that we're receiving from people around them.
Right.
And that's one of the things that, I remember running into that when I worked at the Miracle Channel and Dick and Joan were away for holidays. The pressure that I got from other people, it wasn't even what they wanted me to do and what I was meant to focus on. But suddenly other people felt like they had now a say or a voice. And learning to navigate that is really hard. And so part of that too is, as leaders, we have to learn how to empower our people to lead in the right way, because it can quickly become a political power struggle.
Right.
If we're not careful, So
true.
there's that pressure. The second dynamic that's sometimes at play is just the lack of confidence. I'm not confident enough that I know the leader's hard enough. I'm afraid to do it on my own. I'm afraid to mess up, So again, as leaders, really learning to instill that, I've left you in charge. You can do what you want, and then when they do what they want, make sure that you're gracious about it when it's not exactly what you were thinking of. There's a lot of other dynamics at play. The other thing that happens too is sometimes it's just the relief of not having the leader there. You're like, I can actually take a breather, but then that breather becomes too long, and then you're not actually productive. So there's a lot of dynamics at play. So I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of when we are setting the stage to leave is, who are the people in charge, what are some of the dynamics that can be at play, and how can we empower them to go through those hurdles without it wrecking them.
So the question is, when you're not there, who is representing you? You could put up security cameras.
It's a bad idea. Don't do that.
People have actually done that.
Remember Micah's message, we don't spy.
That's right, we don't spy. Or the other one, it can be implanted in their hearts, right, which we call culture.
Yes.
So when you're gone, the culture is taking your place. Well, even when you're there. Because the truth is, culture is what drives your decisions and your motivations, everything else. Yeah, because people don't do what they're told. They do what they believe they should do. And culture is that getting that belief in there that here's what I believe. And so that was the way that Bo was. Like, she was like, I believe that I am responsible in taking care of this ministry while Al and Terry are gone. And so I am going to do my absolute very best. And when you've got somebody like that that's driven by the culture, then you can trust them not to do things the way you would do it, but to do things the best way that they know how to reach a certain outcome. And that's just a basic principle of leadership, is letting people do things the way they want to do it. Otherwise, we're micromanaging, right? And so it's just really, really detrimental that we get the culture in there. We've got to work on the culture. In that sense, too, you can't be away forever.
No, you can't be away forever. But a lot of it lies too on the people that are left behind. So I want to talk to the leaders that are the guys that have been left behind and left in charge. Is that your number one responsibility is actually to pick up the heart of your leader. There's no other agenda other than your leader's agenda. If you haven't bought into what it is that your leader needs to have happen, because either you feel like it's not as important as they feel it is, or maybe there's something else that you want to do, then there's an adjustment that needs to take place there, because your first responsibility towards the vision is to actually fulfill what it is that your leader needs you to fulfill. And so I think sometimes when there's space for us to lead without our leader there, we kind of take it as an opportunity to do things my way. And that's not in the sense that this is my number one priority, this was their number one priority, and I'm just going to kind of shove this one up first, you know? For us that are left in charge, oftentimes, what we have to do is really, every day, is what is it that my leader expects to be done, and how am I honoring them and honoring their heart and honoring the vision that God's given them by getting that thing done. To be the best leader, you have to start with first being the best follower. There's no other way, you know, unless you've actually really captured your leader's heart, then you're not actually going to be a good leader yourself, because that's the first step to getting there.
And so this really is the proving ground of your leadership, because what's going to happen is the leader's going to come back. They're going to look at what happened, what didn't happen. In our perspective, we're always looking for the person who can do it. Especially when we're not there. We're always looking for that. And that's the succession thing, right? You want to find people who can do it. And it really does come down to the heart. Number one is that, do you have the leader's culture? Do you have the overall vision? And I think too, Becky, you mentioned something about doing what the leader wants, or doing it what you want. You know, maybe under leaders have to learn this, is that what the leader wants is not something he made up himself. Right? It's not like, this is what you're going to do and this is what you're going to agree with and let's do it. That's not where it comes from. It comes from the heart of God, and we have to believe and trust in our leaders. And the truth is, like I always say, that I hear the heart of God more from the people that I lead than I do from the people that lead me. So you listen down as well as up, and then by the Holy Spirit and whatever gifting He's put in you, you kind of formulate what needs to be done.
That's right. And it's a really awesome responsibility, but it's also a really great way to push yourself to grow. You know, just that pressure of being in charge of something when your leader's not there is like, it's gonna double time. You know,
that's right.
Because you're gonna face challenges. You're gonna have to. And I find a lot of times what happens is when you face a challenge and your leader's not there, and suddenly you feel like you're overwhelmed, the first response is to want to kind of back off. But you got to face those things head on, you know? And you got to think, like, so for example, when I'm facing something and, you know, like you're not there and it's like a big challenge, the first thing that I always keep in mind is preservation of relationship is number one for you.
Good.
Right? So that means I can't come down with them and a hammer, and I can't say, well, that's not how, you know, I'm not pastoral, I don't lead like that, so you're in trouble, you know, kind of thing. You have to think in terms of, how would my leader solve this problem, and then enact that way. Because I've had it happen where you leave people in charge, something happens, and then they bring down the hammer, and then you come back and you got to fix this relationship that never needed to be in that place, you know. So the challenge is not just to problem solve it so that it's done. It's to think about in terms of, okay, what does my leader value? How do they normally handle things like this? What kind of patience do they walk in? What kind of grace do they walk in? And you might not think like, well, I don't have those qualities, I'm not that person. It's actually a choice. To be gracious. It's a choice to be patient. You know, it's a choice to be loving and to be kind. And so we get to make those choices. And in doing that, it actually shifts our relationships with those people that we lead. And this is the beautiful thing, is when you successfully lead, when your leader is not there, then that level of relationship deepens down to the next tier.
So it does, yes.
People look up to you now. They actually trust you better. They actually want to follow you more. And then that gives your leader more confidence in, you know, the areas that they've given you responsibility over. So when we do it well, it only becomes blessing upon blessing and increase upon increase.
Next week, we are going to take you into the nitty-gritty of how to make this work. But I just want to close out saying that, as Becky's saying, you know, that it increases the level of relationship when you lead well when the leader isn't there. This is one of the biggest challenges that a potential leader faces. You know, we've seen this in the Bible school a lot. You'll have a group of 20 students and you appoint one to be the student president. Yeah, kaboom, it's right. It just blows up. They won't listen to me. They won't do what I say. And you kind of think, I know. I've been there.
And that's where you have to learn.
That's where you have to learn. And that's the issue. It's not easy, guys.
No.
It's just not easy because the level of sacrifice and commitment you have to make to lead well is a level of that sacrifice that most people are just not willing to
Yeah.
make. They want you to give them authority and they're going to use that authority to lead. But what people soon discover is that authority doesn't lead. It doesn't make people do anything.
No.
They'll just try to get away with
It
whatever.
controls short term and then lots of rebellion behind the
Yeah,
scenes.
that's right. Lots of rebellion, and eventually something's going to blow up. So, coming up, the nitty gritty of how to really do this.